why undergo global payroll consolidation?
It's very difficult to standardize when you've got 30 plus different systems on the go.
We have a lot of vulnerabilities when we have a not standard process.
Today, human capital is one of their largest cost items. Now, we all want something better, right? Lovely faces here, friends and everybody. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And as Stephanie said, we talked about at a higher level. Now it's time to get into brass tacks. And I couldn't be more pleased. I have two of the most exceptional people here to talk about it. So let me invite them to the stage. Craig, Ruxton, please join us. Craig is the global process owner for payroll and time at Wood. Craig, if you would introduce yourself and Wood for the audience, that would be great.
Yes, hi. Lovely to be here. Thank you, Vivek, for inviting me. So my name's Craig Ruxton. I'm the process owner for a company called Wood Group, based in Aberdeen, Scotland, if you hadn't already detected the accent. So Wood Group employs 30,000 people over 40 countries, 40 plus countries, and we currently have over 30 different payroll systems on the go, or payroll processes on the go. So we're just embarking on the journey now to hopefully reduce that to one. So it's a tall order, but I'm up for the challenge.
Welcome, Craig. And Renan Carvalho from RHI Magnesita. So Renan, if you would introduce yourself and RHI Magnesita for the team.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you and nice to be here. I'm very glad to have this opportunity. My name is Renan Carvalho. I'm based in Vienna in RHI Magnesita. I'm the global head of payroll. RHI Magnesita is a refractory company, so it's more a B2B company. That's the reason that's not very well known. But we support every company that needs to stand the heat. So if you need to produce steel, cement, glass, and everything that you need to melt, you need to have a refractory. We are a global company that we are in more than 140 countries. We have 13,000 employees globally. And as I said, our headquarters is in Vienna. Have 10 years in the company, but originally I'm from Brazil. Since November last year, the company has decided to have this global payroll structure. So, and then when we started to have this, we saw the necessity to have this transformation to be more, how can I say this? I mean, to be more compliant and also to be more efficient as a payroll. So thank you, everybody.
Yep, let's sit down. Okay, so Ren kind of kicked off the first question saying why RHI, for compliance. Craig, from your perspective, why undergo global payroll consolidation?
Well, it's really system fragmentation is the main thing. So I do run a shared service based out of Gurgaon near Delhi, and it's all about standardization. It's very difficult to standardize when you've got 30 plus different systems on the go. Even within certain companies, you've got different products within that same company, so it makes it challenging. So if I've got a payroll manager, how does that payroll manager have visibility when they first log in the morning? How do they get visibility of what's going out the door this week, what needs to go to the bank this week? It's almost impossible with that sheer number of payroll systems on the go. So that's the key driver behind it. The second one is reporting. Is that we met with the CFO this morning, didn't we? And she made the point is that she wants to be able to see it's a people company. Essentially, what Wood Group do is we sell people who are good engineers. But being a people company, actually the CFO can't come in the morning and there's no visibility as to how much the people cost within the company. That's just astounding. So that's the other driver, is that in today's world, you should be able to press a button, come in, press a button, and you can get all the consolidated reports straight off, and you immediately know what's the employer's costs, how much is going out the door in that particular month or that particular day or week. So that's the key drivers.
Okay. Renan, from your perspective?
Well, I think we have a lot of vulnerabilities when we have a not standard process. So this, as I mentioned about compliance, it was one of the main keys. And also we, as all the companies, we are trying to establish this GSS mindset within our company. And payroll was for a long time below the HR structure. And usually when we think about HRBP and the training structure, they are more looking forward the people and the process. They are not so, I mean, they don't written the process. They don't care about to have this checklist because it's more related to what you are going to deliver to a person, to an employee. And so it's a more holistic view. But payroll, we needed to be focused and we needed to pay on time and pay correctly. So that's the main reason that we wanted to have this transformation, to have standard process and to have a good quality in our deliverables.
Absolutely right. So, it's similar. I'm sure many others in the audience would, relate to it. It's system fragmentation, need to have visibility, whether it be to cost or whether it to be compliance. Now, we all want something better, right? But without our senior leadership buying into it, it's not going to go anywhere. And both the gentlemen here have gone through the journey. I have seen them through so I'd like them to talk about how did they get their senior leadership to buy into this transformative project. Renan, why don't you go first in that?
Well, I think one of the challenges that we have in the company, it was like we had a strike, not a strike, but our employees in Argentina, they decided to not do any more overtime because they were not receiving time. And when you think in a country that at the time it was like 100% of inflation, I know that for most of you this is crazy. But every day that you receive later, you are losing money because the money that you have is not possible to buy what you could buy yesterday. So, and then they said, okay, we'll not do overtime because payroll errors. So we know that if we do not do our job correctly, we can have issues. And this is just one example. And I think one of the key, vulnerabilities that we show to them is like we were losing a lot of money. And sometimes we don't have control because if we pay 1,000 employees wrongly, this will be diluted in the cost center of the factory, of the other areas, because this will not impact my cost center. I will impact others. But since that I began in November last year, we saw more than 1 million euros wrong payments. And then this could be even more if we cannot have a good structure to check and to see what if we are doing, because if we have 13,000 employees, as we have, if we pay 10 euros each one per month, is a lot of money that you lose in 1 year. So this vulnerability that we were able to show to them and the necessity to have controls, because it's not only to have a new system, you need to have a good process, a compliant process that our payroll team cannot do any manual intervention, that the information that comes from the leaders, approved by the HRBPs, needs to be correctly. So this end-to-end process that will, at the end, be at payroll needs to be very aligned and working. So this, I think it was one of the main factor to the decision to work in this vulnerability.
Craig, from your perspective.
It's very similar. It ties into risk and compliance. But I'd take a different. So I started off talking to managers, trying to influence the managers as to, look, we need a global payroll system, and that was pushed back quite frequently by people saying, look, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Our people are getting paid, so what's the deal? So I had to take a different approach, and the different approach is I started lower down. I started talking to the employees. I started talking to the administrators. I started talking to audit. Now, when I talked to audit, that's when it really landed. Is that they told me a heap of stories, and it was all tied around risk. Yes, you're paying your people correctly at the moment, but actually that could go wrong quite quickly. And the moment I got that as the hook, then it was a snowball effect. So it was still keeping the managers out of it. It was talking to the people who are actually in the process, working out the pain points, and suggesting to them how a global system could really make a difference. They started voicing to their managers, so that by the time I did engagement sessions with the managers, they were actually engaged and they wanted to listen and they wanted to understand. So we went through the managers' sessions. And then I mentioned earlier, we met with the CFO this morning. Well, actually, that was only the second meeting I've had with the CFO in the 18 months that I've been working on this project, so it's a snowball effect. And we've now reached the stage that we're talking to the CFO and she's highly engaged, because it's not just me that's talking to her. She's actually here, lots of other people in the organisation that's also talking about the same thing. And really, when's it coming? When's it happening? Right? So I've had to take a completely different approach. But the short answer, what you both said, is risk. It's that's what the CFO wants to know about, is how can we eliminate risk?
Right. And I agree, right? And this is a very strong message, especially for people who are going down this journey. Everyone wants to show savings and wants to talk about, all the employee experience better and standardization. But greater impact can be, as like what Renan said, 10 euros a month, 30,000 employees, and suddenly it's like 3.6 million euros. You have a business case that is larger than anything that you ever want. But then at the same time, you need to have the expertise to create the groundswell, right? When it comes from below the ground, then it bubbles up to the executive team, and the executive team has no option but at that point of time to go down the path of looking at something which is better than what is today. And more importantly, like in case of certain companies, as Craig pointed out, I'm a services business, or I'm a business that, for all companies today, human capital is one of their largest cost item. If I don't know what it costs, how am I going to predict, right? How do I model what it's going to be tomorrow? How would I model anything? So my favorite question to every CFO is, how many employees do you have? And 99% of the CFOs can tell only till the last 50, no beyond that. So at least 50 to 100 employees are gone. They don't even know how many they have. So that's, I think, the strongest way to create the business case. Now we have the business case, but a project of this size would need very strong foundations. Now, we heard in the earlier panel people talking about data readiness, or you're looking at standardization or buy-ins from your country teams. Of course, Craig, you've done some initial prep work on that already. But how are you approaching foundation of a project of this size, Craig?
Where data is key, isn't it? I think the biggest realization that data, payroll is actually driving data. Payroll is actually the master source of data. So when I talk, we've got 30 plus systems. Each of those systems are independently the master data sources, and they shouldn't be. We've implemented a global HR system, and HR are under the impression that that is the master data. It ain't. Master data is making sure that everyone gets paid correctly. So that's the first. So there's a lot of data analysis. First, to shift this preposition that HR actually are storing the correct data. We need to shift that on to make sure that we do cleanse it and it is sitting in the system that it should be, before we can even attempt to introduce our global payroll system. So data is the key. And I think the other one is change management, is making sure that we have really strong foundations in change management. And interestingly enough, we've talked cost. So the earlier discussion was talking cost and that pool of of cost savings. And one of the easiest savings to make for a company is, we don't need a change team and training. No, that can go. And then a project of this stature comes along, and where do you get that from? Where do you get the expertise from? It's a lot easier if you've got that internal expertise as opposed to bringing in your consultants. But that's really, I see as a key pillar for getting us off the ground, is making sure we do have the right personnel that can support change.
Absolutely right. Foundation is all about data and people. From your perspective, Renan.
Well, I think for us, the focus, it was first the process, because we had 60, today we have 16 vendors / providers. So we have outsourced, we have in-house, and even the outsource, it's different to each company that we outsource it. And the first thing that we looked at, it was to have a harmonization of the process. All of you always heard that you cannot do a global payroll process because each country pay different and etc. Yes, but the global framework is possible, and this was the basis that we started. We defined a target-based model that we have all the activities, who is responsible to do what, the leaders, payroll, HR, and so we created this design, and we will implement this in the next for this rollout. So every country needs to adopt. Also, follow also the principle that we are doing with the implementation of for HANA for the company is less. This we wanted to have standards. We don't want to have customization. Of course, we need to have for a specific purpose, but not, a lot of customization for each country. This is wanted to avoid, to be as much as possible attached to what we define as a global process. And also, I think to be successful, we needed to have a good HRIS system. We have success sectors, but we also saw that it's not fully implemented, and the usage in some countries is not 100% yet. And even that's not my business has will impact us. We are also working with these countries that we needed to put at the same leverage, because we needed to have a HRS system working properly with good process. So this is a transformation that we are starting now for Payroll, but the basis, it's coming since 2020 when we started with the success factor, and also recently we outsourced our HR admin tasks to other company. So also this needs to be established. This needs to be working well for us to come and to have the end of the process, the payroll. So this, for me, is the basis of the logic of the journey.
Excellent. So now that the journey is being launched, everyone wants to have a target ahead, right? Some success criteria. What are some of the success criteria? You talked about certain challenges, right? Transparency, risk, compliance. But as you all have formed this business case and got approvals, etc., to move forward, what were some of the success criteria that you are looking at through this project?
We are looking to have a better employee experience, because we are a global company, but we are not so big. And as I said, we have 13,000 employees, and we have a lot of global leadership. We have a lot of leaders that they manage employees in other countries. So this, we believe that will be a success for us if they can manage people everywhere. So this is one of the criteria that we would like to meet. And of course, to make sure that we are 100% compliant with everything, we create the KPIs that even that it's 100%, we are going to measure to make sure that they will stay for 100%. So to be compliant and to improve our leadership and employee experience for us is the the aim that we wanted to achieve.
From your perspective, Craig.
Cost is probably the key driver.
Right.
But it's quantifying the cost is quite tricky. At the moment, there's a lot of hidden costs. So, where there's no magic button you can press and get your accounts from, you're doing that across 30 different ways of doing it. So the hidden cost is the manual effort that must sit behind there. And it's very difficult to quantify that right now. So we've got to try and find a starting point. If we can't quantify it right now, then how do we know it's a success? Because otherwise, you could just be shuffling the work to other parts of the business. We have to have that clearly defined. So that's one of the major challenges we've got right now. But ultimately, that will drive the business case, is that we have, you are going to reduce costs by X amount of percent. And also utilization of shared services, because if we can continued use of shared services makes standardized processes a lot easier as well. And then, the talent pool that you can pull from, and you reduce that single source of failure, which we've got at the moment in certain areas as well. We've maybe only got one administrator, and I dread, I was on a call last week and one of the areas, and they said, "Well, I work my holidays around about the payroll schedule." And it's like, oh, but what happens if you get run over by a bus? So, okay. So that's the key challenge, is cost plus standard process.
Absolutely. Now to the most important question. Now, I could feed them the answer, but I'll leave it to you all. A lot of people over here are going to start this process, right? What are some of the criteria that you all thought when you thought, okay, we want to choose a provider to work with you all, right? You started. What were some of those key elements that you were looking for in the provider that you would choose and you hope that you would get one? Renan?
I think simplicity, because we wanted to have one system. I mean, we have already our HRSI, but we wanted to have one system. We have some other vendors that they sell the process, the services, but with different systems. And this, for us, based on an experience, we don't see as much as value that we can have like one system to deal with. And also, one of the key factors is today we have several issues when we hire a vendor that outsource to other companies, and then we have cases that it was outsourced again. So this is difficult, because then you need to deal with 3 layers to solve a issue, to do escalation. So I think what we wanted to have is this possibility to deal with someone, and we don't want to have a vendor. This is not the kind of relationship that we do in our company. We try to create partners. So I was talking to Craig before, is that I don't want to do this every 5 years, every 6 years. I wanted to stay with someone for 20 years, 25 years and more. I really wanted to create a connection, and then that we can help each other and we can solve the issues each other together, because then we can create a better environment, and we don't need it all the time, because it's a painful process to change provider, to change to a new system. And for us, we know that it will be a huge problem, that we're going to have a lot of headaches now. And we don't want to do this all the time. So I think, and we saw the possibility to create this partnership. So this, I think it was the main factors for our decision. I mean, of course, if the company do not meet other criteria, like the integration with our success factors, compliant, will not be chosen. So, but the decision is who can be one single partner for us.
Yes. So to add to that, or to embellish it, really, is honesty, and we want to work with a partner who's honest and gives realistic timescales. Again, in our conversation earlier, we were talking about, some companies will say, yeah, global payroll, you can do that in a year. And we all know that that's just not the case, not if it's going to be done properly. Whereas right from the outset, Neeyamo has been very clear as to, this, we're looking at a 3-year project here and you need to phase it. And, we'll work alongside you and work out how that can be done feasibly. And that's the sort of stage that we're going through at the moment. I think it's important not to be a little cog in a big machine, which you can quite easily get caught up in as well. And, they can force you to make decisions. So yeah, I think that's the key, and it's establishing that partnership, that honest partnership, so that when things do go wrong, and I'm sure they will go wrong, is that you have that open discussion and you understand why it's gone wrong, and you sort it out and you move forward with it, and there's you don't have the blame, and you're not constantly having to look up the contracts and involve the legal team to work out how much more it's going to cost us because originally it wasn't factored in, etc. So yeah, we're looking for that. It's that flexible approach.
Thank you. I'm sure all of you will have lots of questions. We're coming to the end of our time, but both the gentlemen are going to be here, and I'm sure all of you are going to be running to them and asking some more detailed questions. And please thank Renan and Craig for their valuable time. Appreciate it.